Hello and welcome to today's video. This time we'll be cleaning up a complete set of the vintage Methuen Sixpennies. This is a penguin wannabe that I absolutely love, and although they didn't come around until April 1939, I think they are absolutely fascinating, and that's what we're going to be cleaning up and having a look at today. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay then, so we're starting off with Methuen Sixpenny number 1. Now, the thing was with this particular series, up until recently, I had literally 12 of the 32 books that had been published by Methuen Sixpennies, and these were very much, this is book number 1, and they were very much a Penguin competitor. So they looked at Penguin with envious eyes, basically, and were looking to compete. So some of these won't take too much to actually repair. Some of them will need a bit of a repair job, well, we'll see how we get on. Obviously, there's no polishing or anything like that involved. I am going to take out any contemporary pricing. This has got a little 45 pence in, for example, and I'm going to give all the books a brush, and then we're going to compare them against the dozen that were in my collection already, so that I can keep the best copies. There was actually one double in this collection, which I was really pleased to see as well. So what we're going to do is literally, so I don't fray any of the early ones in dust wrappers, I'm going to take them out of the wrappers and brush them individually like this. So the good thing about dust wrappers is it's done exactly what it was designed to do. It's protected the book, and they were quite optimistic, weren't they? Because although they released these in batches of 4, they actually had the first 14 books listed on the back. And I remember picking up my first, Methuen Sixpennies, 1939. I remember picking up my first one of these and thinking, oh, these are really, really nice. They don't break the mold in any way. In fact, they are literally identical to Penguins, even with some of the authors that they published. In every sort of way, really, This one's sadly missing the flap to keep that one in place. So, but yeah, they were a bit late to the market, Methuen, and by this time, obviously, it was quite a crowded market. We had the Collins White circles were established. Obviously, Penguin themselves were well into the, they were the biggest in the business, weren't they? So there was a lot of competition. It is interesting that, once again, they chose a bird for their logo, and a lot of them have already been taken, of course, but this is a kingfisher. So I suppose in a way we should be pleased that they didn't call them kingfisher books. Although, that may have been okay. I suppose there is a kingfisher books in existence, but a little bit of muck on there. This is number 2. I had a copy of number 1. I didn't have a copy of number 2. And what we will do at the end, once we've cleaned them all, we're going to compare against the dozen books that I had, plus the one odd double in here. And I'll try and create the best possible looking set that I can for myself to keep. And then I'm going to have a few doubles. I'm actually going to have a little batch of doubles spare, which is going to be quite cool. The thing is, with Methuen Sixpennies, apart from Eric Gadd, who obviously collected these as part of his amazing collection of vintage paperbacks, I only know one other person who collects these, and I believe he's got the full set anyway. So it may be something that someone might want to consider having a stab at. There's a little bit of it coming away there, but I'm going to just put an absolute slither of glue in there if I can. Now, I was using the glue yesterday, so hopefully it's still, there we are, it's still fairly active. There we are. Now, this is proper bookbinder's glue that I use nowadays. I've given up using my Pritt stick, although that was very, very good in its day. But this stuff is great because it dries completely clear, like proper glue, you see. So that's why I tend to use this stuff now. I'll put a link to it. You can't really see. It's called Glue It, bookbinding glue. Pin Flare is the brand, and I bought mine off Amazon. I usually put a link to it in the description down below if you want to go directly to it, because it is a bit fiddly to track down. But that's absolutely fine. Really, really pleased. Apparently, this guy was fairly popular in his day. E. Phillips Oppenheim, but I've got to say it's not someone I've ever read. But yeah, so the series launched in April 1939, and they would release them like in batches of 4. That was sort of their modus operandi, a bit like Penguin would release like 10 at a time. They were taking careful steps, I suppose, in the paperback market. So this is number 3. It's in a wrapper. It's got a remnants of a wrapper. This is another one that I didn't have myself, and it'll be quite interesting. So someone like Eric, so literally that's it it's got the dust wrapper flaps. Eric was a collector for the best part of, well, I think 50, almost 60 years, I reckon he was collecting. He died in his early 90s, and his sons seemed to think it was 40 to 50 years he'd been collecting books. It may have even been even longer than that. Something, when you fall in love with books, I think you fall in love with them at quite an early age, and certainly with me, I'd started collecting books when I was a teenager. But there we are, Murder at the Keyhole. So I wonder if that's a little bit harder to get simply because it was a crime title. Once again, this wasn't one that was in my collection. So I have had a saved search on eBay for Methuen Sixpennies for a few years, and I always look out for them when I'm out and about, and they just don't seem to turn up very often. Either because people don't value them, they don't rate them, they don't think they're any good, maybe they just don't think they're collected. Well, we can definitely say that they are collected, but by how many people were there, I really don't know. But yeah, that's number 3. Number 4, this is when I did actually have the wear case, the book of the film, if you can believe it. This one's in a nice wrapper. So this one looks in quite tidy condition, this one. And this would have finished off the initial batch of 4. Yeah, very, very, very clean, that one indeed. Yeah, pretty beautiful. Is anything inside? No. In fact, even the pages are really supple. That's a nice copy of that one. So just give it the dust. So 85 years worth of dust. That's how old these books are. 85 years now. Yeah, that's a real beautiful copy, that one. Yeah, so that's the first batch of 4, and they were released in April 1939. Then the next batch of books were released in May 1939, and this is the next batch of 4. And this is Methuen number 5, which I did have, the P.G. Wodehouse, Sam the Sudden. I suspect this is the second most collectible book in the series. There is an even more collectible one later on. Wodehouse being Wodehouse, he is highly collectible. I picked up my one, and I know when we get to my one in a minute, when we compare it, my copy is very, very brittle, I seem to recall. Now this one, not unusually, that it's completely come away, the glue is dried out. I see that quite often with books from this period. Sometimes it means they've been stored in a bit of a hot environment, a warm environment, but it's easy enough to sort out. I generally take away the dead glue there. That's first of all. And then I'll do similar on the actual spine. Like so. Now I'm going to do a double glue. So I'm going to put some glue along the spine here, just in a twirl. So it gets in the actual page blocks but because of the way that the book is bound, you can't get in that easily. So just scrape it in a bit. But I am going to do it. I want to make sure the edges are there. I'm also going to glue the actual inner spine of the book as well. So we just leave that there. I'm going to try and do a similar thing here. Just so we've got our best possible repair on it. Now sometimes when you do this, you do get a bit of glue squidge out, but it's absolutely fine. The main thing is just to get it in place, get it the correct height so that it's perfectly synced in. Then push it in place and you'll see a tiny bit of glue squidging out the bottom there, but that's fine, just take it off with your fingers. The main thing is there's enough there and it's going to hold the book in place. That is what we're hoping. And it's interesting that this has happened, even though the book was in a dust wrapper, it is literally just the age of the glue. They probably didn't use particularly nice glue, or, you know, at the time it was probably fine, but they probably didn't expect, the publishers never expected this book to be being looked through so far into the future, I doubt. And as we'll see, the series, you know, published pretty much at the outbreak of war, they couldn't have chosen a worse time really to bring a new series of books into print, because all that was going to happen was paper rationing was going to get harder and harder as time went on. Obviously they didn't have a crystal ball, but at the same time, you know, they were probably just panicking over Penguin being so successful, you know. That's what I suspect anyway. But yeah, so that's pretty much as good as I would expect that one to be. And I think that's, as I said, the second most collectible one in the entire series. Now we've got book 6, The 10 Black Pearls. A bit of a beaten up dust wrapper on this one. Yeah, very, very frayed and partial. But that's okay. Underneath, it's actually quite clean, isn't it, you know? Let's have a flick through. Yeah, internally it's held up quite well. Sadly, that's in pen, so I can't do anything about that one. One thing I don't think we did, I don't think we brushed the PG Woodhouse, did we? But I'm going to leave that since it's had such a major glue. I shall do that another day. It's not vital. Main thing is we're just taking off some of the 85 years of surface dust. Now, I'm hoping that you've probably seen my video of my great haul from Eric Gadd's collection, where I went down with Morris, and you've seen where the books were actually stored, and they were in a garage and they were behind glass. So I don't believe that there's loads of extra dirt has gone onto them, but I also don't believe that Eric did what I do, which is clean the books as they come his way, you know, which I think is, you know, I think it's all part of the process, really. So here is number 7. This one's coming away slightly, I can see, but not all the way. So I'm not going to pull the whole cover off. I probably could, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to put a layer of glue in the trench here, and that'll be absolutely ample to put this book back to where it needs to be. And I certainly was expecting to do a fair bit of gluing today. I've also got a few hundred Collins White Circle books to do over time, and they're also going to be in the same situation where they were going to require a lot of gluing. It's just the nature of the age of these books. You do get it in certain periods, even on Penguin book history, you know, where the books do need reglue in the spines. And I think it's just that the books themselves, they just become, the glue ages, you know, and it just wasn't designed to last forever. The thing is, to make these books profitable, they had to sell in huge numbers, and that was the key to it, to make a little profit on each one. Right, this is a little bit the worse for wear, number 8. Now, I do actually have a copy of this one. It's hard to tell. Mine are actually bagged up, so I'm going to unbag mine before we do the comparison, because I've only got a double. I don't mind debagging them, and then we'll have a look. So this one's literally the dust wrapper is literally fallen to bits. So when I have books like this in my collection, I generally keep the dust wrappers separate. I've got like a box where they're laid flat. It's literally a box, like a shoebox, full of dust wrappers laid out of old vintage ones. I've got a couple of these. I've got some, you know, loads of Penguin and Albatross ones as well. That is very much, you know, you think, well, almost why have you bothered? But we'll keep it together in the name of completeness. And just looking at my own one, I'm hoping that my one is slightly better. It's just literally come away. Okay. So we'll flick through first of all, see if there's any pencil markings, and there isn't. So in Eric's collection, I do believe there were actually some doubles of these Methuen Sixpennies in lower grade condition, you know. I said I have got a double of Edgar Rice Burroughs, which is the rare one, which we'll look at in a minute. So this, it's just... Yeah, that's okay. And then we need to do the same on here, gently. And we'll also do the edges before we glue it back together. But this is quite a low grade one. There we are. So let's do the glue. Well, similar to what we've done. This one isn't. This has got the remnants of the inner cover there, so it's got a bit more paper. So we'll just squidge some on. In my experiments, when I started using this glue, I used it on an old science fiction digit book from the 1950s, which is in a right state, and that had a completely detached cover with loads of spine roll and stuff like that. And I did it over a few days to keep going back and referring back to how the process is working. And I was really, I couldn't believe how it dried up so clearly, you know. It was really impressive indeed. The Trial of Fear. Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? Alright, let's squidge these together. Attempt to get it back into some semblance of being a book. It's pretty ropey copy, this one. But I don't have one myself, so I need to make the best possible job of it I can, because it's going to be my only copy. So I've been reading recently, since I picked up that big haul of services editions, I've been reading the Paperback Revolution website, and it's run by a chap called Al, and we have made contact. And it's a mine of information for someone like me who loves old paperbacks. And Al, the chap who runs it, has been really forthcoming with the information. He's shared his sort of list with me and stuff like that, so I'm really, really pleased with that. I'm going to leave that one just like that. I think it's better to not have that partial spine out, you know what I mean, on display. I'd rather have it on the shelf sort of like that. Anyway, that was the second batch of 4, so we are on our way here. There is, I believe, 32 in all, so we've still got a fair bit to go. So now we're on to the next batch. So these came out in June 1939, and this is a sort of a famous one. This is book number 9, White Fang. This is one that I have got, but I suspect that this is probably a better copy than the one currently in my collection. Pretty clean spine on that. Yeah, so I mentioned about the PG Wodehouse being quite a collectible one. I had never ever seen one for sale, but I knew that it existed. And when one turned up on eBay, even in quite brittle condition, I actually paid £20 for it. However, as a general rule, these Methuen Sixpennies generally turn up for like a £5. They're not expensive, £5 or less sort of thing. The later ones aren't issued in dust wrapper, but I think they're harder to get because we're closer to the war and they're being printed under wartime standards, so, but that's okay. Little owner's name, but we won't mind that. Nice copy of that one for number 9. But yeah, we'll see what I believe to be the next most collectible one in a minute. So this is quite nice. Obviously, Sax Rohmer, he was the author of Fu Manchu. Definitely, he was in his heyday in like the 20s to 40s, I guess. And then he had a revival, didn't he, in the sorts of 60s with the Fu Manchu books. But this is the Devil Doctor, and and he was very, very popular in his day. I mean, he really was, Sax Rohmer. So it's nice to see this representation in the Methuen list. Underneath, once again, this is quite a nice copy of number 10, which I did not have. I had number 9 and number 11. I did not have this one. So that's supremely cool. It's got a little 25p. Actually, it's £2.50. So Eric paid a bit for this one. He didn't pick it up cheap by the look of it. Yeah, that's very pleased to get that. I have actually read some Sax Rohmer and they're not bad. Number 10. Number 11 is this Red Pepper's Patience. This is, once again, this is one I've got, and I suspect in this particular instance, my one is actually going to be slightly better than this copy here. It hasn't got a wrapper, and it would have come with one, I'm pretty sure. A little 5p inside there. Yeah, there's some pen on the front there, which we can't do anything about. There's some cover loss in the corner out there, and it's rolled. It's been read a few times. So yeah, I do have one. I can see I've got my own collection right next to me. I've got a copy. Even mine looks a bit rough. So we'll have to compare the two side by side, and I just save the best one basically. Now, if you're watching this and you're a mad Methuen Sixpenny fan, or you think you've been picking them up yourself and you've seen a few here that I'm evidently going to have as doubles, potentially just drop me an email, and potentially we may be able to come to an agreement. As I said, apart from a couple, they're actually not mega money to buy. It's not like picking up, you know, Penguin Crime or something like that, which is notoriously expensive. These are much, much cheaper. It's a cheap series to collect if you can find them. Yep, so that's as good as we can get, that one. That is it. Number 12 then. I have also got this one, The Silent Partner, but this is in a wrapper. Or at least the remnants of a wrapper. It's got a flap. Yeah. So quite ropey. But we've seen this before, so we're going to keep it. I'm going to keep the wrapper with it. It's all part of its history. Yeah, it's almost come to bits. We're going to need to re-glue that spine, of course. Some water damage on this one, sadly. Let's just flick through a moment. Yeah, okay. It's a bit of a harder one to glue in, so I'm being quite thick. But I'm just going to push it on the spine and then like really push it into the actual bound pages. And we'll see how we get on. The thing is with this glue, it doesn't immediately set like, say, a Pritt stick would, you know, which is more like, almost like a substance, if you know what I mean. It's more like a putty. This glue is more liquefied, but once it's out, it does immediately start to turn to like a plasticky glue. And then overnight, you know, within 24 hours, it's really, really solid. So that's absolutely fine for that. Now, with regards to the dust wrapper on this one, we need to pop it back on. But if this proves to be the best copy, I will be taking the dust wrapper off and just storing it in my box of dust wrappers, rather than having a really tatty one on the shelf. Because on the shelf it's going to look really mucky and dirty, whereas it'll look really beautiful underneath. And I'll have it in my records that I've got a copy, but I'll put with a tatty dust wrapper. But yeah, so that was number 12. So that was the third batch of 4, and they were published in June 39. And this last batch of 4 were published in July 1939. And then we have a bit of a break, and then, well, we'll see what happens. But this is books 13, 14, 15, and 16. So 13, I've got a copy of this one, but it's not in a dust wrapper. And this one looks a pretty nice copy as well. Yeah, they actually got the 16 book listed on the back now, which is cool. Sometimes what you find is when a book has been in a dust wrapper, it sort of holds like a layer of sort of dust around it. It's really weird, but this one had that sort of layer of dust where it somehow got underneath the dust wrapper. So some very, thankfully, very light pencil in there. It says something about it being a first edition, 35p. So I don't know when this was first picked up by Eric. But it's a nice copy. Very nice copy indeed. Does show that they do exist. Obviously, it's always the top edge that catches the dust historically. And what an absolute treat to be able to finish my set. So finally got the full set, but also I just love these books. I've got to say they are really, really nice. They really are. If you're a sixpence lover, and certainly the Penguin books of this period are absolutely beautiful. They're amongst my best and my most favourite Penguin books because of just the way that they're produced. But that's really nice. A little bit, tanning on the spine there, but I don't mind. I don't mind. Right, number 14. This was a new one on me. The Unofficial Honeymoon. Didn't have this one. But certainly the later books are much, much harder to get hold of. And I only had just a smattering past number 20. That's really nice, that one. Another one, really nice condition. So that's going to be a nice edition. Nice copy of that one. It's amazing how they vary, isn't it? Just some books are in nice condition. Others, they've evidently been through the ringer. Not even much dust on that. That is, whoever had that one, they did well with that. The wrapper, okay, it's got a little bit of wear on it at the top with a slight loss. But apart from that, I mean, the book underneath is absolutely beautiful. That's the best one we've seen so far. Number 14. 15 is another Jack London, which I did also have, South Sea Tales, which I think was the first one I ever picked up, This one isn't in a wrapper. I picked it up in Falmouth. I was, if you can believe it, I was on a pub crawl on a stag do. And it was during the day, so we'd started during the day, and in Falmouth, a lovely little sort of seaside town in Cornwall, there was a string of pubs, so we were working our way, pub to pub. And of course, there's a bookshop there. I mean, it's 20 years ago now, but there's a bookshop there. Outside, they've got some second-hand paperbacks, all books £1. And literally from the other side of the street, I spot this one. I thought, what is that? That looks really curious. I had to buy it, didn't I? Then carry it around for the entire rest of the stag do. Can you believe it? That is the devotion to being a book collector. I've only ever found maybe one or two of these in the wild like that. Most of them have come either, I picked up a couple at like Zardoz Books, he had a couple on his shelf. I found the majority of them have come my way through eBay now and again, just by having Methuen Sixpennies as a saved search. I think now that we know all the titles, it might be easier to just put the titles in as a saved search and just search all the different editions until they come up. Yeah, that's okay. I'm not going to re-glue any of that. That's about as good as we're going to get that one, I think. No dust wrapper. But yeah, I'm sure this was the first one that I got. I thought, oh, these look good. Really, really distinctive. They did do a good job of the branding on these, I got to say. They would have been quite the complement to the orange penguins, for example, on the shelf. They would have really, I think, really stood out on the vintage bookshelves, Yeah. Just there's a tiny nick at the bottom of the spine because this hasn't had a wrapper, that's come away. So let's see if I can just, it's 2 plies. Let's just see if I can get a little bit in there. Need my screwdriver for this one. So I put a blob of glue to do the first bit, and using the screwdriver smeared some of that glue for the second bit then, which is the actual spine, like so. So you find that a cover is made up of several bits of paper, and sometimes when a bit comes off like that, it sort of concertinas into 2 or 3 different pieces. So that's generally how I try and combat that. So it looks a bit better now. That bit's folded in. Right, so that was number 15. So we got one more from the initial run, which was this one, Jonathan Latimer, which once again was one I didn't have. It's a crime title. Jonathan Latimer only wrote 4 books, and they're all pretty sought after. Pan published, I think they republished them all. They're really good reads. I'm trying to remember if this is the one I read one a couple of years back, and it was excellent. And I wrote to the editor of Hard Case Crime and mentioned to him, and I said, have you considered this one as a Hard Case Crime reprint? And he said they had read it, they considered it, it was on like a short list, but decided to drop it in the end. So there you go. But yeah, sadly, this one is one I haven't got. It's missing a piece of the cover, and he's in a bit of a state. So I don't know if he's mega collectible. I said he only did 4 books, but it's one I would like to, repair as best I can. But he's also brittle. The pages are brittle. They're yellowed. It's not been stored in a great environment. Before Eric got it, of course, because he kept his books in quite a nice place. Although they were sort of in the basement of his house, the bookshelves rather, were behind glass, so the books were well protected. Well, I think that's about as good as we're going to get it. So we've got some gluing to do, but I'll do the top bit here. Very, very dusty. Yes, this one has seen better days, that's for certain. Now we need to sort this top edge out here. But at least when we've done this one, we will be halfway in our repairing job. Now, I've been quite liberal there, so it's all going to squidge out, but that's fine, because I'm just going to get it off with my finger there. And if you just have a look at this, you see it just goes to like bits of rubber. It's not like a major thing when you squidge it out onto your fingers. Main thing was we had enough on there to put that down properly. Yeah, I think that's about as good as we're going to get it. The other end's okay. It's just not a great book, and there's not a great deal we can do with it. It's just so hammered. I mean, we've cleaned it as best we can. All we can really do next is pop that one in a dust rack, in a paperback bag, and that's as good as we're going to get. But that was it. That one came out in July 1939, and we didn't have any more books in the series for another year. Okay, so there's been a gap of a year, and it's now August 1940 with the next batch of 4, and wartime paper rationing has hit him. England was at war, and paper got much, much scarcer. So the next 4 books were planned, 17, 18, 19 and 20. And this is number. And the books were limited to 192 pages instead of them being, much bigger, sometimes as much as 320 pages. The type is much smaller and the margins narrower, and the dust wrappers are gone. And also, for some weird reason, these 4 books have got this tinge of yellow on the covers, which is not very nice compared to the white that we're used to. But thankfully, it's only for the next 4 books. Now, this is one of those unfortunate instances where there was a big pencil price inside, which when you rub it out, you realise that it's left a ghost where it was. So all you can really do, I don't want to do the whole page, is just try and sort of blend it in. So it doesn't look quite as bad. But the book was evidently horrifically dusty. Incidentally, the art, there we are, that's much better. So the art rubber I'm using is one called Factis. Now, historically I've used a Stabler soft rubber, and when I went back to my art shop, they did have the Stabler one that I'm used to, which I've used for years and had many of, but they only had them in a very small size. So he said this one is the same. It's like they call it a plastic rubber. Yeah, plastic. And basically, it's very, very soft, but it's perfect for old paperbacks, I've found. You can get a much harder rubber, almost like an ink rubber, but that's not really what you want to be using on the inside of vintage paperbacks, particularly books of this age. I have had the odd disaster with a rubber by it not being the right type. So you spend, they're only like £1, so it's not like it's big money, but they're worth pursuing a good rubber, let's put it that way. If you go to an art shop, you're not going to go far wrong. Anyway, we've got 4 in this format. I had a couple of them already, but that was at number 17. Barbara Goulden, Within a Dream. So as I said, none of these would have had wrappers going forwards. These are all, we won't have to worry about dust wrappers. But some might need a bit of repair. Oh, this one's got a little stamp inside. F. Weatherhead and Sons Limited. Can't see the address. E8 Kingsbury. That sounds like a London postcode. E8. Looking at the top of the spine here. Yeah, look at that. And the bottom. So I want to get a little bit of glue in both areas. So I'm going to squidge, put a little bit in there. Obviously OTT, but that's okay because we'll take it off with our fingers. So it will dry completely clear. It's just going to stop that ever getting caught, and it will look better. This one's a little bit harder because it's just in such a small spot, but we should be all right just to get the nozzle in there. There we are. That'll be fine. Yeah, that's okay. So it's quite versatile, this glue, so it's not too bad at all. Right. Death Turns Traitor. I don't recognise this one. I think from this point upwards, I've only, for the last 16, I only ever had 3 of them in my collection. So I think they're much, much harder to get, these ones, these wartime ones. The pre-war ones are probably, well, I think I proved they're much easier to get your hands on. But it's almost like these four were a bit of an anomaly. Like they lost their identity, typical for what happened during the war. These things they were never that uniform. Even Penguin had issues, and they were, the biggest publishers out there for these sorts of things during the war. And mistakes crept in. But this was the last one, number 20, the last one in this like weird yellow format. And I always remember when I picked up my odd, nothing to do on that, when I picked up my odd ones at the end, I thought, wow. And I would always look forward to see, oh, now I know there's 20 in the series. And I did pick up one a bit later than that. I didn't realise until quite recently that there was 32 in the set. So we got the whole lot here, so that's cool. When a book is really, really dusty and you brush the top, it does leave this sort of peppering effect on it, which, sometimes it just needs even more work to get it done. But there is a limit. The main thing is the dust that was hanging around on the top of it is gone now, Right. So this is number 21, so we've got 12 more books to get published. And once again, they came in three batches of 4 in January, February and March 1941. So not quite the Blitz era, here we are, 41, but certainly it was not good for Britain at this time. And paper rationing had already hit in, and publishers were getting allocated paper based on their pre-war sales. So if Methuen, for example, had massive pre-war sales, they would have had a big allowance to keep publishing paperbacks, but that was not the case. And Penguin, for example, who had massive sales pre-war, cleaned up. Basically, they had the lion's share of the paper allocation, so they could keep publishing, albeit in a reduced form, similar to these, get very, very thin, and the books got poorer quality, on much poorer quality paper. There we are. But that was just a sign of the times. Right, so I need to just pop a little blob in here. That may be enough with a bit of luck. Yeah, it was. Hard to judge sometimes, but we'll slide that off. So apparently this chap was, a red author in his day, he was fairly popular. Yeah, the Hillman. Right, now the most collectible Methuen Sixpenny of all. Look at this, a Tarzan at the Earth's core. Now there's 2 copies. There's a slightly ropey one, and this one just looks absolutely beautiful. So we do the beautiful one first, and believe me, I did not have a copy of this, and I think this is perhaps the most collectible of all Methuen Sixpennies. A very early Tarzan paperback, of course. A very collectible author, published at a time when the books were very scarce, and I've been looking for a copy of this for a long time, ever since I knew it existed. In fact, I've got it as a saved search under the specific title, and I've never ever seen one come up for sale. So you could say that's sufficiently rare. Yeah, 1941. In fact, this copy here has got a little £6 inside, which means that Eric himself must have, I guess, bought it from a dealer at some point historically. But apart from that, that is a very, very beautiful copy indeed. So really pleased with that. Sadly, my spare is not going to be so good, but I'm sure it'll do for somebody's collection, just as a filler. But that needs no work on it at all. It's as good as it's going to get. But as I said, we do have a second copy, which is this one, which is far more. This has been read multiple times in far worse condition. But equally, I want to give it as good a treatment as possible because it's such a collectible book. And I suspect a Tarzan fan may be very, very pleased to get a hold of this one at some point. Edgar Rice Burroughs is still highly collected. I don't know if he's quite as popular perhaps as he was. I know Morris has had big collections of Edgar Rice Burroughs through his hands. Certainly I used to like the Tarzan stuff. I still read the Daily Tarzan comic strip, which is being reprinted online, which I really like. I think it's on a website called Comics Kingdom, where you can go there and you can visit the site and they reprint all the classic strips. You just choose, but you can get them emailed to you each day as well if you're willing to pay a subscription of $1.99 a month, which I actually do pay. So I get them delivered to my email box, and that includes the Sunday versions as well, which is fantastic. And I subscribe to the Tarzan strips that way. These are all turned over pages, sadly, so they all need to be turned back the correct way before I'm happy. The books are concertinaed out. There we are. Actually, a little bit lost at the front there as well. So this one's definitely been through the wars quite literally. We've got some loss, some gluing at the top of the spine needed to be done there. So we'll do that bit now. And we might have to do it from the outside as well. Need some down the bottom as well here. Right, so I need a little bit in here. Okay, let's do this top concertina bits now. If this was another just vintage paperback, not so important, I obviously wouldn't be doing this because it wouldn't warrant it. But because of the nature of the book and its collectability, there is literally no way I wouldn't be doing this, because a Tarzan fan, if they haven't got this, will be very, very keen to get a copy, just to say they've got a copy, because it just doesn't turn up. So that's going to look much better once it's fully dried in on the spine and it's nice and flat and tight in a bag. That's not going to look the end of the world, to be honest. You know, it's going to be, it's saving what is potentially a very poor condition book for someone to put into their collection, because someone will have that. Simple as that. And interestingly, I see on the back here they have got, the early ones have gone out of print, some of them, but they have got the latest run up to number 32, which is when the series stops. There we are. So that's that one as good as we can get it. That's probably our last really extensive repair job today, but we'll zoom through to the rest of the series. As I said, these were all early January, February and March 1941 were these ones, and no dust wrappers, so they are just what they are really, which is fragile little relics from a particularly tough era in British paperback history. This one sort of feels very, very worn. Can't do anything about that really. I'd almost be tempted to cut it rather than have it frayed like that. Okay, so a little bit of glue required in that spot there. Just at the bottom of the spine. I think that'll be enough to get that bit glued in. Yeah, there we are. Squidge it out. Scoop it up with my thumb. There we are. That's it. That's as good as we're going to get that one, which is not great, but it's as good as it's going to get. Blood on Lake Louisa. This is number 24. These are all new to me. The latest one I had was number 27. That was the furthest one that I had in my collection. A little 10p inside. Is that in pencil? Oh, I think that might be in pen. Is it in pen? No, it is pencil. Quite firm though. There we are. That one's not too bad condition at all. There we are, that's fairly clean. Robert Hitchens, Tongues of Conscience. And so these last sort of 8 now, they dropped the list of books and they put this add-on, Shadpos, commonly known as Brain Sparklers. Like a tonic thing, it's like a tonic sweet. Very strange, it's very much of its time, but Methuen decided to take the advertising money, I guess, to help out, rather than promote the list of books. Nothing else to do on that one. It's as good as it's going to get, I reckon. It's a nice easy one. Yeah, that's lovely. So this is number 26, Augustus Muir, The Riddle of Garth. This one also looks fairly shipshape. Yeah, list at the front on this one. Absolutely fine, not even a price to rub out on that one. And as I said, these are by far the scarcest ones, I suspect, you know, because maybe people just didn't know that they existed properly, you know, and they couldn't really look them up. So this was the last one I had in my main collection. I didn't have any past this point, and this was like a lone outlier. Look at that, once again, it's in really nice condition. I wonder if Eric picked them up at the same time from a little run somewhere. Hard to know, of course. Catherine the Arrogant. A little something on the inside cover there, but nothing we can do about that. John Ironside. Now look, Methuen, and then someone's put a 9pence over it. Methuen 9pennies. The call box mystery. Yeah, it's pretty nice condition, this one. It's got, the cover is just slightly been dented in somehow. And I'm looking at this spine, and I suspect, I don't know, it's ever so slightly cut. It's weird. It's like the cover is slightly, look at that, it's slightly too short for the book, which is a little bit weird. But it's okay, I'm not going to re-glue it. It was borderline, I'm not going to re-glue it down there. I think that's going to be as good as we're going to get that, which is fine. But yeah, the cover is too short. That's typical of the sort of thing you might find during wartime. Yeah, it's actually too short, but that's fine. These were the last. This is the last batch of force. This is the last Methuen Sixpennies that ever got published. So Marjorie Bowen. And then the series just ceased. They just couldn't keep it going. It was probably lack of paper, I reckon. Oh, very, very dusty. Always that top edge. Well, this one looks pretty ropey, doesn't he? The Blighting of Wartime. Never heard of it. It's got a name on the front there. Very, very grubby indeed. The covers. Pages feel a little bit brittle as well. No marks inside, which is good. So there is. The thing is, if we put the rubber on that, it's going to really show up. I'm trying to be light, and I'm going to try and blend it in again a bit like we've done before, so it doesn't look so bad. Don't think we're going to be able to do much better than that, to be honest. It's not a great copy. It is what it is. It's just a rare wartime paperback, and sometimes you just got to accept that. The last couple then, so number 31 then is George Birmingham. Well, Justice, this one seems okay. Yeah, nice copy of that one actually. Did we brush this one? I don't believe we did we? In fact, we did sort of jump the gun a little bit on that because I see the spine needs a bit of gluing. We jumped the gun slightly, so that's just at the bottom of the spine here. Look at this, look. Dear oh dear. It may be a rough one, but we want to give it the best possible chance to survive the rigours of a bit more time. Okay, now, similar situation at the top here. Sadly. There we are. Yeah, that's as good as I can get it. This one we've already checked, and that's now as good as I can get it. So the very last one in the original run of 32 is this, the closed book. 10p in there. So this one has got some spine damage. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a little wedge of these. Shall I just do it like that? So I got something to lean against. So we want to get some glue in that first bit initially, just a dab. This is a case of it being 2-ply again. Then put that bit of excess glue on top, and then fold the last like remnant of blue from the original spine and stick it on there. And then on this end, see it's popped off like that. So we need to put some glue on the end there. Like that. Not perfect because the book did rip. Yeah, the top of the spine did rip. And there we are, because it was 2-ply again, and that goes down like that. It's a bit of a sticky mess at the moment, but we just need to let that dry now, but that'll be fine. It's got it as good as we could possibly get. So while those are drying out, I shall clear the decks a little bit because we made an awful mess. And I've got my original Methens, which are here. Oh, that's this lot. I'm going to debag those so we can then have a really good look of the full collection side by side, and I can pull out and select the best examples to keep in my main collection. Right, so you're not seeing double. These are my original copies with the copies from the collection. So first off is the Water Gypsies. Now this one came in a wrapper, and was a pretty nice copy compared to this unwrappered one. But I believe I've got a copy in a wrapper, the one that came with this book, but the wrapper was beaten up. So, and it's got a cover tear there. So this is the copy to keep. That's the copy to go in the second collection as doubles. Right, number 2, I did not have at all, so I need to keep that one. And the same with number 3. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Number 4 I did have, so that's my original number 4. This is the number 4 from the collection. This was a particularly beautiful example. So that one is going to stay, and that one is going to be a spare. Number 5 was P.G. Wodehouse, and if you remember, that's the one from the collection. This was my one that I paid £20 for, but it was really, really brittle off eBay. So, and the wrapper is worse than the other one. Although the other one's got a darkened wrapper, this one is more chipped and got some loss. So I am going to put that one, the one that I bought off eBay, is going to be the spare, and that one's going to be my main one. Now we've got number 6, which was also a double. So 2 copies of number 6. This one, on the face of it, seems to be the better one, the better dust wrapper. This one's got a worse dust wrapper and a 10p inside, so we'll keep that one, and we'll make that one the spare. Number 7 I did not have, so we're going to have to keep that one. Number 8 I did not have, and that's that really, really warm one with partial dust wrapper, but it's the only one I've got. Number 9 I did have a white fang, so there's 2 copies of that. So this one actually still in its dust wrapper, so that's pretty nice. And this one was my original, not in a dust wrapper and foxed, so that's going to be the spare, and that's going to be the one to keep. Number 10, the Sax Roamer. I did not have that one at all, and that's definitely a keeper. So that's lovely. Number 11. So this was the copy from the collection, and I did actually have a copy myself. Interestingly, also not in a dust wrapper, and it did get issued in it. And also my number 11 is very, very brittle and worn, as is the number 11 that came in the collection. So I think that for some reason that's evidently a scarce one, but that's the worst of the 2 copies, so I'm going to keep that one for myself. Number 12 was August Muir, the Silent Partner. Once again, I did have that one already. This one is reasonably nice, but without a dust wrapper. This one is actually a bit more worn, with the remnants of a dust wrapper, so I am actually going to take the dust wrapper off. That can be the spare, and I'm going to stick it on this one, I think. Am I? I don't like splitting books up from their original dust wrappers if I can help it. I'm just going to have another flick through. This one on the right definitely is actually cleaner. It's a real toss-up. I think in this particular case, I am going to swap the dust wrappers. Something I don't usually do. I like to keep them with the original books, but sometimes, I mean, they're the exact same books. They're printed at the same time. I'm going to leave it like that, and that is as good as it's going to get, and that's going to be the spare. Right, number 13 I had 2 copies of, The Price of Love. So this was my original, big thick book, no dust wrapper on it either, and this one was a nice copy in a dust wrapper, so obviously I'm going to keep that one. Number 14 I did not have, so we have to keep that one with the collection. Number 15 I did, which was this one, which was South Sea Tales. So here's that one without a wrapper. Here's this one with a wrapper, but much more yellowed and aged. So I'd be tempted to take the wrapper off this one and stick it on this one, which is less aged. Like so. That's the one I'm going to keep. And yeah, actually that one's got that name on, so I'm going to put that in the spares pile. Then we got number 16. That's the only copy of that one, so I have to go with that one. 17, I did have this, and the copy in the collection was far better than the one I already had, so that one can go over there. Number 18, I did not have, so we need to keep a copy of that. Number 19, I didn't have as well. Number 20, I did have a copy, so the Hymn Tune Murder. This one seems much clearer and less dirty than this one, which has got some cover fading and is, quite frankly, in a right old state. So we'll give that one a miss. Then 21, I didn't have. 22, now we had 2 copies of it. One of them was absolutely beautiful, which is the one I'm going to keep, and that I do have now a spare of that one. 23, I didn't have. 24, 25, 26, and this was my last double, Catherine the Arrogant. And I think that one is head and shoulders over that one. So 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32. So there we are. So that's my personal set sorted out. So Methuen Sixpennies didn't have their own range of service editions, but these Methuen ones are actually services editions, but they're not sixpennies. But this is like a separate selection. So they did 2 runs. This is the early one, and these, it's like 2 series. So these actually came out around the time of the sixpennies, but 1944 actually, so a couple of years later. So they did those, and then they did these slightly plainer ones. And when were these published? I think these was like 45, 46, something like that. 1946. So yeah, so that's the earlier series, which I've only got the one of. Then I got this series, which is the later one, of which I've got 1 double. That was actually my beautiful original copy, and that was one that came in the recent collection. You can see we've got a bit of a repair job to do on that, but we'll go through these since we got all the Methuen books out, and we'll give these the clean as well since we're at it. There's only 5 of them, so we might as well keep them all together with the Methuen collection. And make sure that they're all recorded for posterity. There we are. That's actually a really nice one. That's I like the design of that, actually. In fact, the few Methuens that did get services editions are actually, I think they're really smart. They're really tidy, you know. So that's a beauty. Now we got this one then, The Old Manor. So these ones here, this book now released for sale to the public at 1 and 6. Although it doesn't say specifically through W.H. Smith's, they bought a lot of services edition stock that got published towards the end of the war. So that's just coming away a little bit. So I want to pop a tiny bit of glue in there, but we can't obviously go mental because it's only a little bit. There we are. And then let's give it the brush again. There we are. Right, So this is the worst condition one, and it's the only copy I've got, so I want to get it looking as good as possible. So we'll just have a quick look inside. Oh, it's got no back cover for starters. Lol. But when you're a services editions collector, things like no back cover do not put you off. Because, as any services collector will tell you, you just don't know when you're next going to see ever another copy. It could be decades, you know? So, we need to do a bit of a number on this and save what we can of the spine, you know? So, this is not a good situation, but we'll do that bit first of all, I think. We can't have it flapping around like this, can we? It's just not cricket. But if we can save it, we'll be doing the nation a favour, I tell you. So, I mentioned I've been just started opening up a conversation with Al, who runs the Paperback Revolution website, and he's actually just donated his entire collection of services editions to the Imperial War Museum, which is absolutely incredible. What a gesture, particularly since it included all his collection of Penguin Forces book clubs, which are incredibly valuable as like books in their own right. I mean, they really are expensive books, those. And he's just given them all away as a donation for the history of the nation. And without Al's work, I don't know if some of this would have ever been saved. You know what I mean? But in a way, the torch has been passed because I'm still actively collecting services editions, and obviously Penguin, and who knows. Al estimates that there's approximately 500 books published as services editions across all publishers. So if that's the case, I reckon time I've sorted out everything else, I reckon I've got several hundred. I reckon I'm in the 300 to 400 mark with my own collection of services editions, prisoner of war books and things like that. But we'll see. These are the first steps in cataloguing what I've got properly from that big collection I bought. So it's going to take some time. There we are. Look at that. We have a spine again. That was a bit of a job, that one, but well worth it, I believe. You know. Right. Topper takes a trip. Yep. That's absolutely fine. Can't do anything else with that. Oh, plumes of dust, but it looks a lot better. Right, and then the last one. So we had two of these. This is my one I've had for ages, and I picked it up just because it was in such nice condition. I don't think I've ever cleaned it per se, so I'll just give that the wipe. A beautiful copy of that one. But then in the collection I just purchased from Eric Gadd was another copy of it, far worse condition. But you know, these are so scarce, even if they're not mega money or anything, that they need to be saved and preserved and hopefully passed on to fellow collectors at some point. So I actually have a spare services edition now, which is cool. Very dusty, this one. And with regards to the spine on this, it looks like it's already been glued down to an extent. There's a tiny bit coming away there. There we are. Brilliant. So that's all the Methuen Services editions done. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed looking through my collection of Methuen Sixpennies and Methuen Services editions. Certainly I'm delighted to be able to finally complete the collection after all these years. If you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it that thumbs up. Do please hit the subscribe button if you've not already for regular vintage paperback content, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.